Okay, so this is kind of a sorry. This is kind of a bad thing that I usually say at the start of this lesson, but I consider this to be, in my opinion, the most boring lesson, social studies, of the year. That's just the truth. We're working on something called the Granger movement, which I don't find particularly interesting, so I can't imagine a lot of students would find it particularly interesting. But it is a kind of underratedly big thing on the Regents, so we definitely want to make sure we have our bases covered and we understand what it is. All right, so focus question is, how does the Granger movement help improve the life of farmers in the Great Plains? These are just two Regents questions review from yesterday. Jacqueline says the answer to the first one is 3, the supremacy of the national government. That is correct. McCullough versus Maryland, Gibbons versus Ogden, and Wabash versus Illinois, which was from yesterday, dealt with the supremacy of the national government. The national government took control of setting ticket prices over the states, so that is a big thing. Gibbons versus Ogden set up the clause there. And then number 2 is also 2. Yes, Gibbons versus Ogden and Pacific Railroad versus Illinois, they're going to have dealing with the state trade, interstate commerce. So 2 is the best answer. So nice job with that. All right, I'll give you a minute to copy this down here. Let's just kind of set up the problem on the left here. You just have to kind of trust that when you learn in Unit 4, there's going to be a lot of people moving to cities and a lot of people starting to work in factories, all right, throughout the 1860s to 1890s. So we're going to now look at, okay, this problem here. So it is a little bit to copy down, so I'm going to give you a minute to do so. But since a lot of people start working in cities and moving to cities, this is going to cause a problem for us. All right, so let's copy down what's in red here. All right, so let's talk about a couple of things. So since we have basically, and you haven't learned this yet, but since there's a rise in industry and a lot of people leaving, who's responsible for creating food in the United States? Those are the farmers. The farmers have a huge place in American society today, and obviously back in history, because we relied on the farmers to basically create the food of the country. Okay. But some things really start to happen, and a lot of farmers really start to struggle. First and foremost, a ton of farmers leave and lose their jobs. So they go do other things. All right. So we have a lot less food being grown. All right. But the farmers also are going to struggle for a couple of things. Okay. Number one, the prices of trading. Okay. Think back before the Supreme Court case we just learned yesterday, right? The prices of trading were so incredibly expensive, it was very tough for farmers to sell their product. Because let's say you have a product that costs $10 to sell. But let's say it costs $50 to ship. That means to make a profit, you have to like make the price of something $80. But it's something that is spending so much money on just getting it to the person. All right. That is a problem. All right. So one thing that the Granger movement has to do, and anytime you see the word Granger movement, you think of farmers or farmers' rights. Okay, because the Granger movement, if you look back to some of the movements we've had in American history, we've seen the abolitionist movement. Okay, we have a midterm coming up, so I'm going to ask you guys, what was the abolitionist movement's goal? Write in the chat what the abolitionist movement's goal was. Excellent, Jacqueline. To abolish slavery, stop the spread of slavery and to abolish slavery. Excellent. Okay, women's rights movement is pretty self-explanatory, obviously. So we have different movements throughout the country. The Granger movement specifically for helping out the farmers. All right, so the first goal of the Granger movement is they need to make railroads less expensive. Okay, so they lower the prices of railroad shipping in and out of farms. This was huge and basically getting more people to buy food. Okay, getting more supermarkets and companies to buy food that farmers make. Okay, farmers also realize that they got to stop working against one another. Okay, so when you're in competition with another company, you're trying to sell as much product as you can for your company, and hopefully the other company doesn't sell as much, therefore you make a lot of money. Okay, so farmers want to work cooperatively together. So when you do cooperative learning in school, which is something you can't do during pandemic, but when you used to, cooperative learning during school is when you did a project with a person in class or you worked with a group. All right. So farmers will want to work cooperatively together, and they want to, instead of competing with one another, work together and buy from one another. They all wanted to work together basically to help themselves out, because basically a lot of other people weren't buying from the farmers. Now, from this movement, we have a political party that gets created. And this group is called the Populist Party. We have Republicans, okay, Democrats, and for a short time in our country, we also have now the Populist Party. Okay, so now we have three political parties, and this sometimes happens throughout American history, where we have, more than two major political parties. And this is a time where our third political party, the Populist Party, gets pretty popular. All right. Do we have a very strong populist party in 2021? No, we don't. Okay. But for a short while, for a span of about 10 to 20 years, it was a little bit of a problem, and it was a little bit of a party issue. Okay. So this political party was created for the Western farmers because basically it broke down like this. Being a little stereotypical, but for the most part, Republicans were located in the north of the country. Democrats were located in the south of the country. But who's out west? Who's in the Great Plains? They don't really have a political party that stands for them. So they have this group get created. And this group is going to be led by a person by the name of William Jennings Bryan. Now, William Jennings Bryan is a person in American history who's very important, very popular, but was never president. He comes up a bunch. This is the first time you see him. And he is the leader of the Populist Party, and he is someone who's speaking on behalf of the farmers. And he's basically fighting for farmers' rights. Okay, he's also fighting for women's rights, because if you remember something important yesterday, women lived a lot more equal of a life out west than they did in the east. So if you were a woman or if you were a farmer, the Populist Party was a great political party to get behind because they were speaking on behalf of those people, where the Republicans and Democrats were not as focused on the farmers and women's. Okay, and then the last thing you're going to learn about is they wanted to do something called the free coinage of silver. Now, when you get to the assignment, you'll see a little bit more what this means. But basically, since farmers owed a lot of money, and since farmers weren't making a lot of money, they wanted to basically change what our money is based off of. So let me try and explain this. You have money, like the dollar. Okay, how does that piece of paper, as a $10 bill here, right? How does this $10 bill be worth $10? It's just a piece of paper. What makes this money? Well, what actually makes something money is it has to be backed by usually something like a precious metal. Okay, if it's not backed by a precious metal, something that you could actually find and actually have be value from, this otherwise is just a piece of paper. Okay, America is on what's called the gold standard. Okay, they basically take gold, they take that precious metal, and then they go through and try and obviously use gold to back their currency. Well, farmers want not only gold, but they also want silver. Okay, and they don't want to use dollar bills. They would like to use coins as opposed to paper money. All right, so this is a huge topic back then, probably not as big of a deal now, but this is something to obviously keep an eye on. All right, let's see what we have here. Okay, so this is the last slide of today. So I'm going to give you another minute to copy this down, and then we will get into today's assignment. Okay, so let's just have this discussion because this is a topic that comes up a good amount over the next 4 or 5 months of social studies. What does it mean to have a third party? So we just introduced the Populist Party, and the Populist Party and the Granger movement, very, very similar. They work together. The Populist Party is the political party for the Granger movement. So every movement's going to have a political party attached to it. So like the abolitionist movement, they had the Republican Party back in the 1850s, 1860s. A more common movement today is the Black Lives Matter movement. More Black Lives Matter people are usually a part of the Democratic Party. Back during history, the Populist Party was having the Granger movement attached to it. So most elections since 1860 have had just Republicans and Democrats squaring off, but sometimes a third party can get very popular, like the Populist Party, no pun intended, just that's the name of their party. These third parties rarely have a presidential election winner, but can do a few things that shape the scope of American politics and American government. But oftentimes they can get the bigger political parties and government to start changing laws in their favor. If you get enough people behind a third political party, they sometimes speak loud enough where they can get some serious change done. And the Populist Party is a good example of that in helping to get more farmers' rights. Okay. The Populist Party and the Granger movement proposed more laws that gave the farmers more power. Okay. Number one, sometimes they lower the cost of trade between railroads and giving more political rights to women and farmers. And this was a huge thing. You will start to notice over the early 1900s, women will start to get more rights within the country and start to have more of a say and more power. Okay, a huge reason is from this is because of the Populist Party and from what happened out in the Great Plains. Okay, you'll see farmers, continue to struggle a little bit, but they definitely have, we saw with the Supreme Court case. Okay, Wabash versus St. Louis in Illinois, the Pacific Railroad. Okay, they have less price, lowers the cost of trade between the railroads and giving more political rights. So this helped out the farmers as well. And I have this little Regents question here on the bottom right, if you guys want to take a look at it, to kind of give you a sense of how a Regents question might be worded. The Populist Party can be considered a successful third party, not because it won a presidential election. Okay, so we could just eliminate one right there. Populist Party, we've not had a person besides a Republican or Democrat be a president since like 1850. So what does it mean that it was a successful third party? All right, write in the chat what you guys think the answer is and see how we do here. Jacqueline says 4. Do people agree? Mia, Jessica, what do you guys think? Mohammed, what do you think? Madison, what do you think? Is it 4? Mohammed says 4 as well. Okay, Mia agrees. Okay, yes, the answer is 4. All right, we did have some laws passed. We saw a Supreme Court case. We don't see specific laws that change for women, though you would eventually gather, hopefully, that women do eventually get the right to vote. So you could probably, make that assumption. And then, of course, there's some other laws as well that you're going to learn over the 4th and 5th unit that was kind of set up from the Populist Party and set up from the Granger movement. Okay. So let's go through the rest of class today. You guys have a assignment, very typical to what you usually do. You have a reading, but then you have also some websites that you're looking up. So let me first just start with this screenshot here. We have mentioned William Jennings Bryan as the leader of the Populist Party. He's going to give a pretty famous speech that's going to influence a lot of farmers. And influence a lot of people from the Great Plains. It's called the Cross of Gold speech. Basically, it's him going after gold being a huge problem in the country. You're going to start to see for the first time, why, things like inflation, start to see why certain farmers wanted to change, from being on the gold standard to being on the silver standard. I know for an 8th grade student, it may be a little tough to follow. But you're going to read through this speech, okay? He's going to speak on behalf of the farmers, okay? And then after you read through the speech, you're going to answer the questions that are dealing with here. Okay, you have the Cross of Gold speech. The first 4 questions are all from the speech, okay? Then question 5, you're going to click on an article and answer this question. And then question 6, you're going to click on this article and answer this question. All right, so, you got a couple different things you're doing here. You should get this done without a problem, though you have about 18 minutes to do it. And then obviously just turn this in by the end of the period if possible, or the end of the day if for some reason you're not able to finish. All right. So, yeah, you guys get started with this. We'll go over some things towards the end, and obviously no one will go anywhere because I have some things to say before the end of the period. All right? Let me know if you have questions.